Hey everybody! Once again, our videos today are brought to you by Mrs. B and Mrs. B's computer. Thank you, Mrs. B. She's letting me use her computer today. So to bring you our next set of videos, this one's going to be on cell division and really leading to a conversation about cancer. And it may seem odd to be putting these things together, but you'll see why in a minute. It's very logical to put them together. So we're going to look at some highlights of cell division, specifically what are the chromosomes and why are they involved in the process? What's the point of mitosis? What causes cancer? And then why can cancer be thought of then as a disease of mitosis? So first, let's get to a really basic point. Cells divide so we can grow and replace damaged cells. Obviously, you were not born the same size you are now. In fact, you started from a single fertilized egg. So obviously cells have had to divide and divide and divide to produce more cells. But we also have to replace cells over time. We're always, constantly, every second, losing cells, and we have to replace them. And usually when we replace the cells, we also have to make sure that all the replacement cells have DNA. And not all, because there are some exceptions, and we'll talk about them later. But most cells have to have DNA in them, and they have to have DNA because either they are going to be required to make a lot of proteins and therefore need the instructions from the DNA, because DNA is the instruction set for making proteins, or they're passing that information on from a hereditary standpoint. That is, we're talking about sperm cell or egg cell, they're carrying information that will eventually be used to produce an individual. It's particularly important to correctly, move the chromosomes during division. It's not a random number of chromosomes we're talking about. You have to move the right number the right way so that all the cells have the exact same information so they can do whatever they're supposed to do with the DNA that they receive. So before we talk about cell division really in any detail, let's talk about chromosomes themselves first. Chromosomes, cells rather, can vary in the number of chromosomes they have, depending upon what kind of cell it is. All somatic cells, most somatic cells, the non-sex cells, that is, cells we associate with your arm or your nose or your liver or your pancreas, anything that doesn't do with reproduction, these are going to be somatic cells, and they have a diploid number of chromosomes. And we'll talk about that number in a second. Gametes, and the only gametes that are there are sperm and egg cells. These are the only cells rather, that have a different number of chromosomes. They're going to only have a haploid number, which is going to be half the somatic cell number. So in humans, our diploid number is 46. That is, we have, in most of our cells, we're going to have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And again, pairs might seem like an odd thing to talk about here, but you have one chromosome 1 from mom and one chromosome 1 from dad. You have chromosome 2 from mom and a chromosome 2 for dad, a 3 from mom and a 3 for dad, all the way up to chromosome 22 for mom and chromosome 22 for dad. And again, remember, chromosomes are just pieces of DNA. So with 22 pairs, that gives you 44 chromosomes in somatic cells. Then, depending upon whether you are female or male, you're going to have an X or, an XX or an XY. And then these last two pieces of DNA are going to give you a total of 46. So again, these are going to be somatic cells that have 46 chromosomes, 46 bits of DNA in them, and that gives you your number, your diploid number. In humans, the haploid number is 23. So that means in a sperm cell, this is a sperm cell because it's got a tail, see? It has a 1, a 2, a 3, that's a 3, a 4, a 5, etc., all the way up to 22, and then an X or a Y for a total of 23. So eggs have 23, sperm have 23, so that's the haploid number in humans. So we'll talk more about that process, sperm cells and egg cell production in A and P2. But the point I want to make here is we're going to have to, if we need to copy our cells, forget sperm and egg for a second. If we need to copy an arm cell or a liver cell, we need to actually produce cells that have the exact same number of chromosomes in them as in 46. So during part of the cell cycle that we're not going to delve into, we're going to copy the DNA so that we can have enough DNA to actually make 2 sets of information for each of the daughter cells. So I don't want to delve into the details of cell division. Perhaps in lab you'll talk more about prophase and metaphase and the different phases of mitosis. I just want to focus on this idea that cell division that occurs by mitosis produces new cells for growth and tissue repair. The point of mitosis is to replace cells to be exactly alike, to have the exact same information as we started with. In meiosis, again, we'll talk about it more in A&P2, but I wanted you to understand this term now. In meiosis, we produce the gametes, the sex cells. Spermatogenesis and oogenesis are the processes. They are kinds of meiosis that produce sperm and egg cells. Again, the point here is mitosis produces, again, all cells that are going to have 46 chromosomes in them. I don't know where I went. Hang on. So 46 chromosomes in mitosis, but only 23 in meiosis. And here you see the comparison between them. Here you see mitosis and meiosis. Again, I'm not interested in you knowing all the details of these processes. I'd much rather you understand the point of mitosis and the point of meiosis. And in particular, this idea that these processes are very, very, very carefully regulated. Here I am. I'll show back up over here. Okay. So with that, let's move into just a brief conversation of the connection of mitosis and cancer. And I'm going to adjust something here. Here we go. Okay, so cancer then can be thought of as the disease of mitosis. And that seems a little odd statement to say, but if you look about what happens in cell division, here's a healthy cell. And as we go through the process of dividing and producing new cells, mitosis occurs normally. We produce lots of cells. Everything goes fine. If we have an injured cell or a cell that becomes injured, typically, hopefully, normally, that cell simply dies and doesn't continue, and we don't want to continue on with a cell that's got issues. So what happens in cancer, though, is a mistake happens. We produce an injured cell through whatever mechanism, but that injured cell doesn't die, and it makes more injured, weird, strange, dangerous cells just like it, which leads to uncontrolled cell growth and cancer. So what I want to get at here is the idea that mitosis is normal, but cancer is basically an issue of abnormal cell division. You can get different kinds of abnormal growth. Benign and malignant are the 2 classifications for describing the growth of uncontrolled, unregulated mitosis that leads to cancer. In benign issues, you have a slow-growing, encapsulated, that is, it's basically in a capsule or a shell inside part of the body. It's not invasive and it's not going to spread. The term for that is metastasize. It is not going to spread. And usually it's what we call well-differentiated. That is, we can see very easily that it is a regular cell with some slight changes, but it's not invasive. It's not going to go anywhere. And sometimes you'll see a term like OMA, like fibroma, which represents a benign form of irregular cell growth. Malignant's far more serious and far more dangerous. These malignant cancers tend to be fast-growing and non-encapsulated. They're going to grow outside of their area, and they're going to metastasize, and they're going to spread around the body. And they're poorly differentiated. And again, if you see a term like carcinoma or sarcoma, that usually refers to malignant cancers. So the point I want to make with all this, and it seems a little odd to kind of be talking about mitosis and cancer together, is cancer represents irregular cell growth. And there's a lot of theories and studies about cancer, but let's just kind of end with this idea of what causes it. Where does cancer come from? Cancer can be thought of as, again, irregular cell growth, but that's going to be caused by some abnormality is going to show up. Something is going to be causing a cancer cell to start. Let me back up for a second and say this, that our cells are the starting point from cancer. Something happens to our cells. It could be we could have a gene that we inherited from our parents. That's going to be, eventually that gene clicks on and triggers irregular cell growth. So it could be an inherited form of cancer. It could be errors in DNA replication. That is, we were copying the DNA and we messed up and we produced an irregular gene. That gene allowed the cells to start growing uncontrollably. That could be the origin of cancer. A lot of cancer probably originates from carcinogens. That is, our exposure to chemicals which causes cells to change, like tobacco smoke or radiation or chemicals, even infectious agents. For example, cancer of the cervix is due to a virus. So things that we either catch or things that we're exposed to can cause irregularities in our DNA. The DNA becomes messed up. The directions for controlling our cell cycle, for controlling mitosis, get messed up, and we end up with uncontrolled cell growth and cancer. You also see here synergism. That is, it could be a combination of factors could result in cells becoming cancerous, and even unknown. We don't even understand completely all the mechanisms still with cancer. So with this video, what I wanted you to see is that there is a connection to cancer and regular cell division. What I wanted to show you in these videos here, I'm just going to play them and let you watch them if they will work on this link. They're really good summaries of cancer and metastasis, spreading of cancer. So let's see if these will work here. And if they do, we'll get a chance to watch them.
Cancer is a group of over 100 diseases characterized by abnormal, uncontrolled cell growth. In a healthy body, cells grow, die, and are replaced in a very controlled way. Damage or change in the genetic material of cells by environmental or internal factors sometimes results in cells that do not die and continue to multiply until a mass of cancer cells or a tumor develops. Most cancer-related deaths are due to metastasis, malignant cells that penetrate into the circulatory system and establish colonies in other parts of the body. Great advancements have been made, but cancer is still the leading cause of death for people under the age of 85. In the United States, 1 in every 4 people die from cancer.
Spread of tumors to distant locations is of great importance in cancer. About 90% of the deaths due to cancer involve tumors that have spread around the body. The movement of tumor cells to other parts of the body is known as metastasis. Metastasis is a complex process during which cancer cells break off of the original or primary tumor and move through the body to form tumors at new locations. From the point of view of a cancer cell, this is a dangerous and often unsuccessful process. A trip through the body is full of hazards that cause the death of most cells that begin the journey, even tough cancer cells. To begin the process, individual cells must break away from the tumor and invade nearby vessels. The cells crawl along the surface of other cells and the fibrous, stringy structure surrounding them, and then force their way in. Shown here is the invasion of the blood supply. Once inside a blood vessel, the cancer cells may perish from a variety of causes. Some cells die simply because they are unable to survive floating around in the bloodstream. Others may become damaged and die when they squeeze through tight spaces or bump into the walls of the blood vessels. Still, other migrating cells may be recognized and destroyed by cells of the immune system. How and where the migrating cells stop is different for different cancer types. Once the tumor cells are no longer moving, they can begin the process of forming a new tumor by leaving the blood vessel and beginning to reproduce in the new location. This does not always occur, and cells that have made it this far may still die or fail to divide. If the new environment is suitable, the newly arrived cell will begin to grow and a new tumor will develop.
Okay, that concludes this video, and we'll move on to our next one. Thanks.